Welcome to the Total Soccer Show Weekend Review. Thomas Frank seems to be striking all the right chords, and I, for one, welcome our new Tottenham overlords. Spurs are flying, and Man City might need a fix. Like maybe a goalkeeper who doesn't pass to an opponent from his own six. But full credit to Spurs, who look upgraded all the way through. Maybe after this weekend, they'll be thinking, Eberechi who? It's North London at the top of the league after a big win from the Gunners, after Gyökeres, Saka and Timber delivered Leeds some stunners. Everton's home debut went well and Burnley made no mistake, while Chelsea went to West Ham and drank their milkshake. Elsewhere, Barcelona pulled off an epic comeback flex, while Bayern played Leipzig and Zescod sex. And on Serie A's return, Napoli were looking finer, thanks to goals from McTominay and Kevin De Bruyne. Nearly there. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, your friend of mine. Hello, Mr. Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Mr. Ryan Bailey. Excited to be here. Excited to hear all about how Thomas Frank is a genius and no one ever doubted him, and we all knew that Spurs would be the best.
Yes, that is the party line that we're sticking to for the rest of the... Maybe through October, should we say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anybody who was optimistic about Manchester United, you fools! You fools! It was always Thomas Frank and Tottenham. Don't fact-check any of my previous appearances.
I think there was only one person of the four of us who had Spurs in their top five. I'm feeling quite smug about
Joe?
that.
I think it was Joe.
It sounds like me.
Not how I remember it. I'm not taking my victory lap just yet because I think Postecoglou won his first 5 matches in charge, and we saw how that ended. So
Indeed.
I'll wait until May.
Hello, Graham Rutherford. There is a theory that soccer doesn't really count in Europe in August and September. Do you subscribe to that theory?
Wasn't that a Harry Kane thing? Remember, he didn't score in August for about the first 10 years of his career. So if you ask him, I think only May counts for him now as a Bayern Munich player. Congratulations to Harry Kane, by the way, on another Bundesliga title. I think we'll talk about that later on.
We will. Yes, a rousing start from Bayern Munich. We will get to that later. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, by the way, is the best way to support us. Bonus episodes there, including Weekend Review Extra. What's up in Weekend Review Extra this week? Maybe some Liga, maybe some Glasgow Rangers, Graham. What do we think? They're not
Will you let
hot?
me? Will you let me talk about the J-League title race at all? I mean, if you're letting me talk about Scottish football, anything goes on
Open
this
forum,
week's episode.
Graham. I'm nothing but an open forum on Weekend Review Extra. Very happy to have that, of course. Patreon.com.
Cristiano Ronaldo losing another final in Saudi Arabia. We're all game to talk about that, right?
Let's do it. Let's just have everything from your newsletter on the Weekend Review Extra. Why don't we do that, Graham? That sounds fun. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, the best way to support us. A please and a thank you. Hey, Taylor. Should we go to the Etihad Stadium?
Let's do it.
Talk about our first game, which was Manchester City 0, Tottenham 2. Goals from Brennan Johnson and João Palhinha, making it back-to-back wins for Tottenham, our new overlords. Very good defensive display from Spurs here, Taylor. They've won more Premier League games against Pep Guardiola's Man City than any other side, say Squawker. This is one that we could see. Maybe we should have seen it coming. The fans, the travelling Tottenham fans, chanting, "It's happened again! It's happened again!" Manchester City, it's happened again. If you'll remember, it was a 4-0 win, I believe, last time they went to this stadium. So 6 unanswered goals in the last 2 visits. So my opening question for you, Taylor: could one of us coach Tottenham to a win at the Etihad?
I think Graham probably could. I think with your rhyming abilities, you could motivate the squad. I think Graham could bring about a practicality that's required. Yeah. But my goodness.
City.
Were they good? Yeah, exactly. That's the way to go. They were so good, Spurs, in this game. And I don't think City were even that poor. I think for large stretches of the first half, it is Spurs pressing with a relentless intensity and physicality. And City, for the most part, did a good job of playing out. I think as the first half went on, I thought, kind of like we've seen this game before, where a team really aggressively presses City, seems like they're going to cause some problems. City end up looking unflappable, not flapped, and then find a way to score. And it's a credit to Tottenham that even when City did start to kind of have some joy in possession, did start to create some opportunities, they weathered that storm and then created opportunities of their own and ultimately get the lead and then get the second goal. And I thought this was Spurs just looking like they were fully bought into what Thomas Frank is asking of them. The squad looks great. Mohamed Kudus looks exceptional. And I think there is plenty of reason for optimism for Spurs, even if they were already expecting to beat Man City, because apparently that's just what they do.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how much stock we put in that record. It is a weird glitch that Pep has lost 10 times to Spurs over the course of his Man City career. That's just nuts. But
he's only lost like 12 times in his whole career, so that's pretty It's pretty
10 of
telling.
them, 10 of them to Spurs. Yeah, I don't know how much thought we put in that sort of thing when you're going back to like the Pochettino days, and there's a couple of wins from that time in there. But
which is curses, Graham. They count for everything in this game.
they do, apparently so. But we had some evidence that Spurs would be able to pull off a result like this, and I'm pointing to the Super Cup game against PSG, where they had a very similar game plan. They sat deep for periods of that match against PSG. They sat deep for periods of the match against City. But also there was like really intelligent pressing triggers as well, where they did press high up. We saw it for the second goal, which obviously is a James Trafford blunder at the wrong possible time for that young man, as Man City are considering bringing in another goalkeeper, who, by the way, will make almost exactly the same blunder many times over in the season. Donnarumma's not known for being great with his feet. But you look at the starting position of Spurs when they're trying to play out Man City, and they're so high, they're right on the edge of the box. So there were moments where Spurs were able to expose City in that way. But when they were able to attack open space, we saw Brennan Johnson, we saw Richarlison, we saw Mohamed Kudus, we saw the connection down the right side between Pedro Porro and Kudus in particular, and how they were able to expose some of the issues that we saw Man City experience last season. And I thought this was one of the first litmus tests that City have had this season, as they move into this new era where they've spent so much money and the team looks very different. Have they solved some of those issues? Because keep in mind, the Rodri situation is not over for them. He's still on the bench, not starting these games. And we saw that some of those new signings have yet to bed in. They haven't solved all of those issues from last season. I do see progress in the way that Man City have played. Some of those signings I think will be excellent. I think Reinders will be the signing of the season in the Premier League this season. But Spurs are just a bad matchup for them. Always have been for the last couple of seasons with this group of players. And then you add in the intelligence of Thomas Frank, who just seems to have communicated that, like transplanted that intelligence into his players immediately. Spurs, I said this at the start of the season, Spurs have a good squad. When they are fit, they do. I go through that squad, and no strays intended here, Taylor, but Man United and Spurs were put into the same bucket last season, and I have so much more faith in their individual quality over Manchester United. You then have a manager like Thomas Frank, who, again, to draw the comparison to Manchester United, Amrin's been in that job for a while, and it seems like he's still in this process of, these players will get my ideas at some point. Spurs immediately seem to be playing Frank ball. So everything about this performance from Spurs was very, very impressive.
Yeah. Graham, did you see the stat doing the rounds about how long it took certain Premier League managers to win 2 consecutive games in the league?
I did not, but I'm guessing it didn't look good
it's
for Amrin.
Like I think Arteta, it took like 8 games. Pep, it took 2 games. Thomas Frank, it took 2 games. Amorim has not yet accomplished that feat. He has been there for quite some time at this point. Yeah, I think the consternation and confusion around what Amorim is doing is pretty palpable. But with Tottenham, I think it's an amazing response from where they were last season. It does make me wonder what Big Ange was or wasn't saying that was not motivating that team, because it doesn't seem like Thomas Frank has come in and reinvented the wheel. It doesn't seem like he has moneyballed his way to figuring out new ways to get performances out of players. It just feels like he's gotten collective buy-in and he has motivated accordingly. It does seem like some of those new signings are already paying dividends. Paulinho on the score sheet, obviously, but also just looking really good in midfield.
Yeah.
I already talked about Kudus. And then they got reliable performances from reliable players. Graham, we have talked about how good Mickey van de Ven is for this Spurs team. I forget how fast he is in terms of making up ground to put in challenges, but also I forget how strong and good on the dribble he is simultaneously. There's a few times in which City have kind of set up their own pressing triggers, they've set up their own trap, and they're waiting for a pass from Van de Ven to then pounce and sort of catch Spurs to spread out. And instead, Mickey van de Ven carries the ball forward multiple times, 20, 30, 40 yards, and rides challenges and shoves people off and then finds a simple pass. And it makes City have to collapse. It kind of nullifies what they're trying to do, and it gives Tottenham much more control of the game. And so having a center back that can alleviate pressure on the defensive side, but then also on the possession side, is no small feat and no small service to what Tottenham are doing.
The Romero Van de Ven thing is obviously very important to Spurs. There was a moment, the 78th minute, Van de Ven's challenge on Phil Foden in his own 6. I think it's one of the best challenges in recent years, frankly. The way, the margins he's got to pull it off. He sort of goes in for the lunge and actually gets the ball with his trailing leg, I think, in the end. But he's got so little room for error to get that right, and it's very, very impressive, Graham. So, Van de Ven, once again, really good.
He's a freak in the best possible way. He's an absolute giant. He's lightning quick. He's good in the ball. I said in the summer, if I'm Manchester City, and I feel quite good about this statement after this match, if I'm Man City and I'm looking for a defensive player, I'm going and putting £80 million on Mickey van de Ven, because they still need to. I thought this game was one of the signs that we've seen that Man City have still to replace Kyle Walker. I've highlighted this a couple of times, but people talk about De Bruyne, Rodri, rightly so. I think people underestimate how much of a safety net Kyle Walker was for this Man City team in defensive transition. Mickey van de Ven is that safety net for Spurs, and he was able to match up physically with Erling Haaland in this game. I thought, when I talk about the intelligence, it's things like Romero and Van de Ven stepping out to make tackles at the right time. They weren't doing it every single time, so that they weren't becoming predictable. They weren't rash in those tackles. But when there was an opportunity, when there was a rash touch, Romero and Van de Ven were both doing that. That would then alleviate pressure. I thought Jed Spence was really impressive as well at effectively like standing up Oscar Bob and Ryan Cherky. Again, intelligence of knowing when to engage that player into the tackle, when to stand off them. I thought his body positioning was really good as well, where he was showing a player to the line a lot of the time rather than inside to have a shot. I thought Pedro Porro on the other side was decent in those situations as well. So a really strong defensive performance by Spurs. That then gave them the basis to essentially bet on being faster and stronger when attacking open space through Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson, by the way, is a really funny player because he basically does nothing in games, but he's worked out that if you make runs to the back post, you will score at least 10 goals a season. And that's basically what he did in this game as well.
The line that Spurs fans are saying is all he does is score goals, which you can interpret positively or negatively, I suppose. But that's what his purpose is. It
does kind of put a limit on maybe where he can go in his career if that's all he's doing. But for a team like Spurs, in this game in particular, where they didn't need him to be particularly nimble in possession, they just needed him to crash the back post. Yeah, he's very valuable.
Graham, when you talk about Kyle Walker as the safety net, is that just his speed? Is that what you're alluding to? So that's what you felt like they were missing for that first goal?
Yeah, I mean, you see, one of the things Kyle Walker was really good at was he had obviously the natural physical speed, but his reading of the game, I think, was better than a lot of people gave him credit for. So he could see danger.
Pep included, maybe?
Yeah, well, we all know Pep's opinion on dumb Kyle Walker. But I can't remember who it is at the back post. Is it Rico Lewis, maybe? Who, by the time he realises what's happening, Brennan Johnson's like 3 yards ahead of him in the sprint, and he's just not catching him. I think Kyle Walker was really good in those situations. They haven't replaced him in that regard.
You're right, because even if you are trying to play that offside line, even if you are hoping he's offside, I do feel like Kyle Walker had that extra burst of pace just to be like, oh, he's not offside, or he might not be offside, I'm going to catch up. But it's really well done from Spurs on that goal, because it is them sort of baiting City into stepping higher up and then just going direct. And we've talked about teams trying to go a bit more direct this season. Spurs here executed it pretty perfectly. It's a great flicked on header, I think, from Kudus. It's a great kind of reception control and then final pass from Richarlison, who I thought looked immense, both in terms of his involvement in the game, but also I forget how huge he is. And there are a few times when he goes in for headers that it's just like, oh, he is knocking a child out of his way to get on the end of this one. He looks motivated. He looks up for it. He looks feisty. Just ask Nico Gonzalez a couple different times in this game. Ruben Dias the same. He gets into it. And there's just that level of, I don't know, feistiness of not backing down that I think you need if you're going to take on a team like City and beat them. And Richarlison definitely brought that as well.
It's all those back tattoos powering his game there, I think.
That doesn't hurt either.
Taylor, I'm going to give you an opportunity to jump into the TSS time machine. We're going to talk about Manchester City for a second. Perhaps look at our evaluation of their match against Wolves last weekend, in which we decided they're pretty imperious. Do we still feel that imperiousness in this team at this point?
I said I think that if they're within 3 points by Boxing Day, I think they win the title. I still feel that way. And I think Graham said it pretty well earlier, that this is a team that clearly has growing pains and has growing to do and has to kind of figure out how to get all the new players on board pretty quickly. We've talked in the past about how sometimes it can take a half season for new players to kind of fully get to grips with Pep's system and to understand the expectation. I think that second goal, the errant pass from James Trafford, is a very good example of just a slackness that isn't often present with Man City. And it's not just that that is absolutely where Spurs wanted that ball to be played. They are baiting that pass into the middle to then pounce on it. It's just also that the pass itself is to the wrong side of I forget who it's going into. Is it Nico Gonzalez that he's trying to find with it? But it's to his wrong side. It's a bad pass into a space where Spurs wanted that ball to be played, and it's just that slackness that you can't afford. It's that type of mistake. And there were a few of those in this game. There was just a slight failure to execute in the way that was not present against Wolves. So maybe it's just the case that Wolves are much worse than Tottenham. That's definitely true. Yes. But also, I do think that this is a team that just has to kind of keep figuring it out and keep coming together. And I think if you're City and you feel like, oh, we just blitzed this team, we put them to the sword, we're back, baby, we got it all figured out, maybe there's just a little bit of ego that has to be kind of knocked off the perch. And I think Spurs did that pretty well. So I still think they are going to be a very, very strong team. I think it's results like this that help kind of form the narrative for the season, essentially.
Yeah, my preseason prediction for City was third, but better than last season. I think I'd probably stick with that at this moment in time. I think it's quite clear Pep doesn't have a clear idea of his strongest lineup right now. Oscar Bob comes into the team for this game. Marmoush comes into the team for this game. Sherky, actually, I think Oscar Bob started against Wolves, but Sherky and Marmoush certainly come into this lineup, and it just felt a little bit disjointed with the two of them in there. I don't think Nico Gonzalez is up to being the Rodri replacement. I just don't think he's got the defensive going.
The ovation for Rodri when he comes on in like the final 15 or whatever it was, along with Phil Foden, justified, because Rodri is an incredibly important player, but you did get just a little hint of like, the other guy wasn't you. We're very happy you're back. And I think that does make a bit of a difference, yeah.
And that's the thing, right? This is Man City without Rodri, so I don't think we should underestimate how much of a difference he's going to make when he's fully fit and he's back in this side. Nico Gonzalez he's just not the Rodri replacement. I actually think in the Club World Cup, Tiani Reinders did a better impression of a Rodri at the base of the midfield, but then if you take Tiani Reinders out of the kind of more advanced position, you lose a lot of his creativity, the sort of stuff we saw against Wolves. So it's just very clear that Pep is working out this team in his mind. But I cast my mind back to the treble-winning season, where they were pretty mediocre for the first 2-3 months of the season, and then all of a sudden he figured out by putting John Stones into central midfield, everything unlocked going forward for that team, and they were completely unstoppable. And I don't think it's entirely impossible that the same sort of thing could happen again.
I think he's sitting there going, which fullback can I make go into the sweeper defensive midfield role? Can my genius strike again? Maybe that's what he's thinking. But maybe, Graham, his most important decision, perhaps in the long term, is goalkeeper, as we've touched on. James Trafford with that unfortunate pass to a Tottenham player in his own area for that second goal. And as we've established, I don't know what world he thought that pass was on. I'm sure Ederson was sitting there on the bench going, oh, boss, I wouldn't have done that. I'm just telling you. But obviously, as we record, and also the Kudus challenge where he sort of kneed him in the chest outside the box.
Oh yeah, he was very. How is that not a red card?
I don't know how he got away with that at all. Yeah, that was incredible. VAR obviously thought that was no issue with that. But Donnarumma, as we record, rumoured, Graham, to be coming to City as well. So that's going to be a big knock for James Trafford if that happens and he ends up being cast aside.
Yeah, it seems to be a poorly timed mistake from him, and it was the sort of moment we saw from Trafford in the Premier League when he was at Burnley a couple of seasons ago. And I know a lot of people said, I don't watch a huge amount of Champo football, I have to say, but I heard last season he matured a lot, and I think he was maybe Player of the Year in the Championship last season. But that was the Champo. The mistakes are punished much more ruthlessly in the Premier League, and we saw that on Saturday. The Donnarumma thing is funny. It sort of reminds me of, I won't fully believe it until I see it, until he's actually signed for Man City. I kind of wonder if there's more agent play going on here than is being widely reported. It kind of reminds me of, remember when Man City were close, inverted commas, to signing Cristiano Ronaldo, and really that was a play to draw Manchester United out. I wonder if this is to try and draw Manchester United out. But it's reputable sources are reporting it, so it just seems like a funny fit for me, because he is equally bad with his feet, or even worse actually than James Trafford with his feet. So there'll be more mistakes like that one.
I kind of hope it is the Man United trying to draw them out and make them pay more. Sorry, Taylor. None taken.
That bait's probably going to be taken. With James Trafford, though, I think it's interesting because he has, obviously, the mistake. He has the one you've already outlined where he comes out, and I love the commentator saying, he barely got a piece of Kudus. And it's if barely is his entire torso, then sure. But the thing that I noticed is that he then, for most of the game, Trafford, if he's coming off his line, if there's a ball to be won, he gets there, but it's a lot of just lumping it back down the field or hoofing it into touch. And there's a world in which that is a good response that, like, yeah, you had a bad mistake with your feet. Now you're still being confident. You're still coming off your line. You're still winning challenges. You're not letting kind of attacking plays develop. Except that it's a pep team, and a pep team, I think you're not expected to you're expected to not make that mistake in the first place. Don't make that mistake before you make that mistake. The Cruyff quote, sort of. But I think if you do make the mistake, there's an expectation of get over it and get right back to what's expected of you. And what's expected of you if you're a City goalkeeper is good distribution, not just putting it into touch and letting Tottenham waste 30 seconds or 45 seconds to take a throw in and kill the momentum. And so even there, when he does have somewhat of a response, I don't think it's the response that Pep would have wanted.
And that's where Ederson, he just has credit in the bank. He just has the ego and the earned arrogance to go into the dressing room at halftime and just be like, sorry lads, like that one's on me, and just move past it in the second half, where someone like James Trafford, who is already under pressure to keep that place with the rumours around Donnarumma, felt like he was in his own head already. And I fear for him a little bit. I sense he might be on the bench for the rest of the season.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, this is Tottenham's world for the moment, and we're all just living in it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at their joint at the top of the league North London neighbours, Arsenal. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the weekend review, everybody. We go now to Sunday's match at the Emirates. Arsenal 5, Leeds 0. Yeah, pretty comprehensive one for Arsenal. This one was set-piece FC for the first goal for Jurrien Timber. Then that nice sucker rocket. Timber scoring again. And, of course, a brace for the new guy, Taylor. Gyökeres getting on the score sheet for this one.
I was going to do the celebration and then I forgot what it actually was and realised I was just covering my entire face. So this is my version of it.
You can keep doing that if you like.
Graham, do you have any frustration about it being Gyökeres who takes that penalty at the end? Do you wish it were Max Dowman?
Over baby boy Max Dowman?
Yeah.
Somewhat, but there was an enjoyment to how emphatically Gyökeres just smashed it into the back of the net. Very Harry Kane in the way that he took that
I score goals. I score all the goals. Yeah, he's definitely had a point to prove in this one. I guess Jurrien Timber did as well. As Ryan said, he gets a brace in this one. And it is another example of Arsenal being very good at attacking set pieces. In this one, it's the same play roughly both times. They have 4 players at the back post, like kind of on the 6-yard box, just outside the 6-yard box. And then just before the kick is going to be taken, they all sort of run into the 6 and just create chaos, I think. And it is put a bunch of bodies into the 6-yard box. If you're not static, then I think like you're supposed to basically not move once a corner kick is about to be taken. If you do move and run into the goalkeeper, it's going to be seen as obstruction. And I think if you have people sort of making designed runs, there is an intentionality to creating chaos, creating bodies in the box that is then probably going to limit what the goalkeeper is able to do and how comfortable they are in coming for the ball. And also because it's less of a designed posting up on a goalkeeper, I think you're not going to get called for infringement as much. And in this case, it is just put the ball in and hope something comes off, and Jurrien Timber pulls something off both times. So credit to Arsenal for more set-piece magic, and credit to Gyökeres for getting on the score sheet, getting the brace, and taking that penalty really emphatically.
This was so close to being the absolute perfect day for Arsenal because, of course, the day starts with the Eberechi Eze unveiling before kickoff, which was frankly iconic. Like it's one of the best. I don't know if you've seen the announcement video with Ian Wright. It's one of the best announcement videos I've ever seen. And then to have him come out and he just strolls out with such aura. And it's just like dripping off him, and he's just like looking around, and the whole crowd is going nuts because obviously we all know the whole.
But then he starts sort of shaking his head, and he's like, "I can't believe this is happening."
Yeah,
it's like it was almost like a very human moment as well. I thought it was great.
It was very human, and I genuinely thought it was a very iconic unveiling, and it just got the whole stadium up for that game. So to then have to smash Leeds, you have 2 set-piece goals, so you're still doing what you do very well, but then to have Gyökeres scoring twice and getting off the mark, then having Max Dowman coming off the bench, he looks legit. He was absolutely electric in the last 15 minutes, wins the penalty to make it 5-0. The only dampener was the injuries to Martin Odegaard and Saka. Now, there has been some reporting, I think, by the Times that they're not quite as bad as feared, which would be good news for Arsenal, but I think those 2 players might be out for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Kai Havertz is obviously out as well, we think, for a lot of the season. So there's already a sense that maybe history is repeating itself for Arsenal. But it's quite clear that they are much better equipped to handle injuries now with the signings that they have made. So there's just I don't know, I'm close to changing my title prediction with Liverpool and Arsenal. They just feel in a really good place at the moment, Arsenal.
Yeah. Max Dallon, by the way, born in 2009. If anything, you could say, actually, the 2000s really ended the day he was born, December 31st, 2009.
Yeah. I realised that my Twitter account is the same age as him.
Wow. Did you start yours on New Year's Eve, Graham?
December 2009. I don't know what date, that's all it tells you. But yeah, my social media is as old as him. Wow. Depressing.
Graham, do we think Spurs or Arsenal are calling up the Spurs front office and just being like, just curious if y'all are in for anybody else? If there's any other attackers you're thinking about going for that we might then try to poach from you really quickly?
Or Hincapie from Bayer Leverkusen, which has literally happened today. Yeah, Spurs were going for him, and now Arsenal have come in with a bigger offer. He wants to go there. So
Spurs, they've got to tap. Like there is some sort of listening device. You gotta start checking the offices.
Just
I think
copying their homework.
Are Bayer Leverkusen keeping any players this year?
Nah.
We'll get to them later in the show, by the way. But wow, yeah, Exodus.
Can just very quickly, can I talk about the first Gyökeres goal? Because I think that's such an important moment for him. Not just because it gets him off the mark, but because of the type of goal it was. No other Arsenal player scores that goal where he makes that powerful run. First without the ball, he makes that run. And we saw that against Manchester United, but it didn't quite come off for him when he got into the areas. The execution was lacking. Here, the execution was there, and it's just like pure brute strength, the way that he forces his way into the box and then smashes it in at the near post. As I say, no other Arsenal player scores that goal. And if Arsenal's summer business was about giving themselves different ways to score, I thought that was a really impressive moment from Gyökeres.
Very good. All right, good stuff from Arsenal. Another London team who scored 5 goals this weekend were Chelsea. They got 5. West Ham got 1 in that game. West Ham fans streaming out as Chelsea put in their 4th goal in this one. But they were top of the world after 6 minutes with the lead. Lucas Paqueta with a shot of a man who definitely hasn't done any gambling. Wonderful strike that one was. And then it obviously fell apart a bit for West Ham.
Is this a weird one that, like, I there's no notes in the running order for this one? I watched this game, and I went to put notes in, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, West Ham are not very good. Chelsea looked like exactly what we thought they were going to be. They put together some really strong attacking performances. They backed themselves to kind of battle back twice, theoretically, even though the second goal was disallowed for West Ham. But they do go 2-1 down very briefly, and then it goes back to 1-1, and then they score a bunch of goals after that, Chelsea. But it just felt like a very routine performance for Chelsea, which is maybe in and of itself a positive development, that's now kind of what the expectation is for them. They're the other team that I think we all had in our top 4 when we did our season preview, and performances like this certainly help justify that.
Yeah, definitely. All about the Pedros this one, wasn't it? Pedro Neto and João Pedro doing very well in this one. My beautiful boy, Cole Palmer, getting injured in the warm-up, though. Otherwise, a very, very good day for the Blues. West Ham are now without a win in 6 home matches, and 8 goals is the most they've conceded across their 2 opening games in a top-flight season. Yikes. Yeah, in trouble, West Ham. Oh, dear.
Man United West Ham manager swap? Who says no? Everybody? I don't know anymore.
Wow. Let's get to Man United, shall we, Taylor? Nicely segged to Man United's 1-1 draw at Fulham. Who was it? Fernandes missed the penalty, didn't he? By some distance, I'm going to say.
Well, the referee touched him, and so then you have to miss to show. Yeah, that was an odd situation. Yeah. And he didn't do his usual hop. He just
no hop.
Smash
was
run
that
up.
because of the referee contact that they had no hop? I wasn't sure.
To his credit, he was asked about it afterwards because basically, for people who didn't see, he's like backing up to get his footsteps right and bumps into the referee who's gone around him. And then there's a somewhat heated exchange. Afterwards, he basically said, like, no, it happens. I have to be a professional and I have to convert, and I didn't. So he holds his hands up there. Small mercy, because overall, another really frustrating performance for Manchester United after they looked better in that loss to Arsenal to open the season. In this one, I think some of the familiar problems on display, including just that lack of killer instinct once they go 1-0 up. It didn't feel like they were truly pushing for that second. It didn't feel like they were really trying to control the game, trying to kill the game off, and ultimately they let Fulham back in. And then there's the questions of the goalkeeper, there's questions of the midfield, there's questions of, is Amorim able to get enough attacking flair out of this team? And it feels like a lot of the familiar questions remain.
Yeah, I thought Man United started well, Taylor. They had real intensity from the first minute, kind of like the Arsenal game, and I thought Cunha and Buemo were fun. The best that I can say about Manchester United right now is they just clearly have better players in the attack than they did last season. I don't know if that makes them better as a team.
How are they doing though, Graham? Those attacking players?
No, they've yet to combine for a goal because this was an own goal.
They have not scored a goal this season. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's what I'm meaning. Like, I don't know if they're better as a team, but you can clearly see in terms of like their ability, just rudimentary ability, Cunha and Mbeumo are better than what they had. So you're making a projection that at some point soon it's going to result in goals, but it hasn't happened yet. And what I would say is a lot of Manchester United's attacks, they seem to be very individualistic at the moment. So they're great fun, like when Cunha just decides to take on 3 players and then Mbeumo has a shot from outside the box. And a couple of those moments will result in a goal sometime soon. There's not a lot of like passing creativity. There's not a lot of like sequences. And that was underlined by how Bayern was the only Manchester United player in this game to create a big chance in 90 minutes. And that's the one, Taylor, when he boots it long and Cunha takes it down. And it's a good save from Bernd Leno. But yeah, I just thought, beyond the intensity and the energy, there's just not a huge amount to Manchester United at the moment. And then they lost control of the game in the second half because they do not have the midfield to take a grip of games and put their foot on the ball. Manuel Ugarte is a bust. He's just not good enough on the ball. Seems to lack physicality off it as well, which is kind of surprising given that's meant to be his whole thing. I'm not entirely sure why Kobe Mainoo doesn't see the field in this game. Not entirely sure why some of the other attacking changes weren't made. Why Benjamin Sesko doesn't start this game is a little bit confusing to me. It seems like maybe moving Mason Mount into midfield would be a good idea. Amarin hasn't gone for that yet. So, just lack of physicality, lack of tactical fluidity from Amarin is really concerning to me. Questionable changes, poor midfield. Not great stuff from Manchester United. And I read after this game, this is kind of unbelievable. Sorry, Taylor. I just find this completely unbelievable. Amarin has now managed Manchester United in 28 matches against current Premier League teams, so teams that haven't been relegated. He's won just 4 of them, and 2 of those wins came in his first month in charge. He has won 2 matches against current Premier League teams since November. That's unbelievable. I cannot believe that's a fact. That's real. Lenny Yoro has been at Manchester United for 13 months and still hasn't started in a win against a current Premier League side.
He had some injuries, let's be fair, Lenny Yoro.
He did.
No, I mean,
thankfully for him, he was grateful for that.
Joe isn't here, so I will go on a momentary Manchester United, not even rant. It's just like the state of things. And the state of things is basically sacking the manager has not worked any of the 400 times they've done it since Sir Alex Ferguson resigned. And it has led to a feeling that there's rot in the club. There are players who don't want to play for the team or don't want to play for a manager if the style doesn't suit exactly what they want. There's front office questions. And so I think there is a feeling of stick with Amarim. Like they wanted him. This is the person that Omar Barada identified and brought in and made happen. And Amarim himself said, I don't want to join midseason. I want a full preseason. And they effectively treated last season as a full preseason. And then he got a full preseason this summer and things look kind of the same. And so it ends up in the kind of familiar position of this doesn't seem like it's working, especially when you look at other managers. Arne Slot hits the ground running, and that's like an understatement. Thomas Frank looks just fine with Spurs, and many other managers have come in and had an impact. David Moyes is another good example of that. And I think by contrast, it feels like Amarim is still sort of like, well, I don't have quite the personnel I want, and we haven't quite gotten it exactly how we need it to be. And there's just that lack of flexibility. There are still looming questions about why certain players aren't playing, about if they can play this system, even with the personnel they have. Like, Graham, yeah, you're right. If you move Mason Mount into midfield, maybe that makes them better, but do you then move Bruno further forward? Do you have to change the midfield approach entirely? Does Casemiro sit? It feels like a lot of questions that still haven't been answered. And it leads to the feeling of maybe he's not the right guy, but maybe nobody else is either. And I'm once again glad I'm not the one who has to make decisions for Manchester United, although they're the ones who created this situation in the first place.
To add to Graham's stat as well, like the Premier League middle class is quite big. So since Amarin took over, in playing teams who finished between 7th and 17th, Amarin's played 14 of those games. He's won 2 of them. So whereas Man United seem to be quite competitive in the big games, arguably, it's that middle class of the Premier League where they seem to really struggle, which is fascinating because obviously Fulham are very much part of that.
And there is, again, since Joe isn't here, I will say, there does seem to still be a mentality issue. And it starts with Bruno missing that penalty. And you can just see the vibes go off at that point. There's a lack of confidence. There's a lack of just like, we're going to be okay. And I talked about this last season with Real Madrid and in seasons past with Real Madrid, how even when things go wrong, even when they're 1-0 down or 2-0 down in the first 15 minutes, there is just a vibe from that team of like, we'll figure it out. We'll be okay. And sometimes they don't. Oftentimes they do. But it's that kind of steadiness and that willing to kind of keep playing your game, keep backing yourself, and expect to get a result that is just utterly lacking with Manchester United. And as soon as something goes wrong, as soon as they're rocked a little bit, it doesn't feel like they can stop rocking. It feels like they just start making it worse and start getting more panicky. And I don't really know how you fix that.
The vibe as this game got away from them, and it did get away from them.
Yep.
I think Fulham were closer to winning it at the end than Manchester United were to winning it. The vibe from a lot of Manchester United players, just reading body language and facial expressions, was it's happening again.
Yep.
Like, the old scars are opening up again for this team. And look, we should probably highlight Fulham did improve a lot in the second half. And the player that I thought made the biggest difference was Jedi.
Yeah,
when he came on, he completely neutralised the right side for Manchester United, which was fairly effective in the first half. He stopped Manchester United from getting in behind, like he did there was an Embuemo breakaway where he just sweeps up and beats him for pace and comes away with the ball, but also gave Fulham an outlet going forward. And we saw that for the Emil Smith-Rowe goal, which I don't know if if he actually touches the ball, but he makes a run, which then creates the space for Iwobi to get the ball into the box, and the run comes from Smith-Rowe. So, yeah, he allowed Fulham to breathe in the game. He was a turning point, him coming on for Fulham. It's just great to see him back because we know the difference that he makes for the national team, and there's an important window coming up in a couple of weeks.
I don't know, Graham. I thought Ruben got the best out of his substitutions. You could see the way this game went when Fulham bring on Jedi Robinson to be the more attacking fullback. They bring on Harry Wilson. They bring on Emil Smith-Rowe. They bring on Raul Jimenez to kind of chase the goal, to get the goal, to kind of try to push on for the winner. And by contrast, Manchester United's final two substitutions are Eidenhaven and Harry Maguire. Bring on two center backs at the very end of the game tells you maybe they were just trying to see out this result, which is telling, just a little bit.
There we go. Wonderful stuff once again from Man United there. Why don't we go to the Hilly Dicks? That's what we're calling it. Everton 2. Brighton 0. Everton.
Maybe what you're calling it. I prefer the Hickory Dickory Dock. That's my favourite nickname of the...
Both good. Both good. All right, maybe we'll
just
run a poll
just lends itself to good nicknames, doesn't it?
Yeah, who'd have thought naming your stadium after a law firm would be so fun. Yeah, Everton's first Premier League home game at their new stadium. And that was a 2-0 win for them. Jack Grealish, 2 assists in this one. First time he's had 2 assists in a Premier League game since December 22. Very good stuff from them. And also Everton keeper Jordan Pickford saving a penalty from Danny Welbeck, Graham. Good stuff.
Yeah, so first of all, I can't wait to go to a game at the new stadium because it does genuinely... The Hickory Dickory Dock. I'll say it again. Okay. It looks great. Great name, great stadium. Obviously very different to Goodison, and I will continue to miss Goodison. I cry. But the new stadium, it really does it for me. The location on the river, the steep stands, I don't know if you've seen like the outside of the stadium, but it's like a brick front, which kind of blends into the sort of dock area around it. It's got this like big window out to the Mersey from inside the stadium as well. So I think it looks absolutely incredible. And the sound of Z cars before the game with the siren, I'm so pleased that they've taken that to the new stadium because that is the best walkout sequence in the Premier League. They've kept that. So very excited to go to the new stadium. Also excited to watch Grealish and Ndiaye for Everton this season because they make Everton so much more fun. They've got great potential for vibes together. Combined for the first goal, Grealish in particular I thought just played with such authority that we haven't seen him play with for a while. So I'm hopeful this will be a bit of a resurgence for him because it's been too long since we last saw Jack Grealish at his best. He's one of the most fun players in the Premier League, so let's hope we see that player again.
Very good. James Garner's goal was a banger. That's James Garner, the Everton player, rather than the classic Hollywood actor, of course. And Matoma, by the way, I don't know if you saw this chance, Graham. He did the thing where he teed himself up for a volley and smashed it and hit the crossbar. He almost got his unbelievable banger of the season, like quite early on. Did Matoma. He's
good for a banger, isn't he, Matoma? Yeah. He scored one of the goals of the season last year with a great banger. But yeah, off the crossbar this time.
Very good, yes, indeed. Burnley 2, Sunderland 0. Burnley have got their first goals in the Prem on their return. They finished 24 points above Sunderland last season, so I suppose through that lens, Graham, it makes sense that they got this win.
Yeah, and I think one of my main takeaways from the first 2 weeks of the season is it's definitely going to be more competitive near the bottom of the Premier League table this season, which is a good thing. All 3 promoted teams have won already after 2 rounds of fixtures, and then you factor in like some other established teams like West Ham look to be in a bit of trouble. Brentford maybe will be down there as well, but even they've won a game this weekend. So I just think it's going to be a lot more difficult to. Wolves have not. No, they have had a tough start to the season. My prediction that they would be like 15th or 16th is maybe not aged so well. But yeah, I think it's going to be more difficult to call. I went big on Sunderland last week. They were very impressive in that first game. This obviously wasn't up to that standard. I will say though, not overly surprised that they struggled more in this kind of game than maybe one against like West Ham, and I don't necessarily mean because West Ham are so bad. I mean like because of the tactical matchup. They just had more of the ball in this game. Burnley let them have more of the ball, so they didn't have as much open space to attack as they did against West Ham. They still had a couple of big chances. There was a chance for Talbot, one for Mayenda, so they could have been ahead at half time, and they were a threat from set pieces as well. But they're not particularly nimble in possession as a team. So when Burnley take the leads and then just invite Sunderland on top of them, that's the perfect scenario for Burnley in this game. So I think they'll have more trouble in those games than in games where they are able to counter against teams.
There we go. Brentford with a 1-0 win over Aston Villa. Record signing Dago Otara scoring on his debut here. Taylor, Keith Andrews, I guess this is his first win as a manager ever?
Yep, I believe so. And they looked really good. They looked pretty strong. They looked pretty confident, and they got the result against a Villa team that I think I expected to win this game. I expected to have a stronger start to the season, and it feels instead like they're a little bit static. I don't know. They're a little bit stale. Like maybe they need a freshening up. Maybe they need a few more players to come in. It just doesn't seem like there was the feistiness and the quick tempo of possession that we saw from them last year. By contrast, I think Brentford maybe a little bit direct at times, but I think backed themselves to make something happen and backed Mikael Damsgaard to make something happen. And he did multiple times. He has dribbles where he gets out of pressure. He has dribbles where he creates shooting opportunities. He has a really lovely disallowed goal in this game. But I thought he was just pulling strings, looking excellent. As long as he is healthy, I will always give Brentford a fighting chance. And I think it's an important win given the way the season started, given a lot of the speculation around the team and the kind of media vibe around the team, the narrative vibe, if not the actual vibe. I think to come out and get a win and kind of have that statement of intent of we are going to be okay, it is going to be a competitive Premier League season, we can get results. I think it calms nerves when they really needed to be calmed.
There we go. Wonderful stuff. Bournemouth with a 1-0 win over Wolves. Wolves not good, down to 10 men. And Crystal Palace 1, Nottingham Forest 1 in the UEFA Paperwork Derby. Ismail Assar and Callum Hudson-Odoi with the goals in that
Clasico, I think, is what it'd been,
nice.
Like court for arbitration for sport. El Clasico, I quite like that.
That's good. Very good stuff. Feisty on and off the field was that one at Selhurst Park. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we go to the continent to see the Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our weekend review. Levante 2, Barcelona 3, Graham. Wow, Barcelona coming back from 2 goals down in this one. Pedri Ferran Torres, own goal in the 91st minute, I think it was given in the end, wasn't it? But a good comeback for Barcelona. Marcus Rashford making his full debut as well. Played half the game. There we go.
Yeah, first of all, Barcelona are just so unbelievably entertaining on a weekly basis. It's a joke. They are a science experiment. The fact that they can continue to win trophies and win games while playing in matches like this every single time. Last week it was 2 red cards to the opposition, which obviously helped them, but still a very chaotic match. This week, Levante went 2-0 up, and then Barca had to fight back, which they did because that's what they do. And in fact, they fought back to 2-2 within 6 minutes of the second half. Not a great first half or first start for Marcus Rashford, who was generally pretty ineffective in this match. And I think one of the most striking things was that when he was hooked at half-time, Barca just all of a sudden had so much more energy. And that might have been a team-wide thing. That might not be purely on Marcus Rashford. They probably got a rocket from Hansi Flick at half-time. But it was still striking, the difference that Dani Olmo and Gavi in particular made with their energy and intensity. It just felt like Barca were right on top of Levante from the start of that second half. And the other thing was that taking Rashford off allowed Rafinha to move into his best position on the left again. He starts kind of in a more sort of central position. And then having Gavi and Olmo through the middle improved Barcelona's ability to press high. So they looked a lot more like themselves in the second half. I think Marcus Rashford does have a use for this Barcelona team in games where there's a lot of space in like quick transition and when there's open space for him to attack. In a match like this, where Barcelona require their attackers to be a bit more nimble, they're going to have lots of touches of the ball. They expect to high press and counter press to create chances high up the field and force mistakes. Marcus Rashford isn't really your guy for that, as Ruben Amorim will attest, and that's kind of the reason he's on loan at Barcelona in the first place. So, I think he still has a bit of a point to prove that he's a good fit for this Barcelona approach.
All right. Mixed fortunes for the Madrid sides. Real Madrid with a 3-0 win at Oviedo. Kylian Mbappe with a brace there and Vinny Jr. Atleti being held 1-1 at home to Elche, failing to hold a lead for the second Liga game in a row, Graham. Rut-row?
Yeah, rut-row indeed. I said last week that even though Atleti lost to Espanyol, I actually thought they played quite well for a lot of that match. Not here. They got what they deserved, and it was another one of these performances that just suggests Atleti can't make this evolution that Simeone wants. I spoke about it last week. Happens every 2 years, spends a bunch of money. We're going to be more proactive. We're going to have more of the ball, and after a couple of months, he goes back to his default setting. So that very much feels like it's in the offing, because in this game, Atleti they were just slow. They were slow. They were laboured in possession. Not a lot of creativity. Johnny was fine. If we're doing the American focus here, I don't think he did anything wrong in terms of what he offers. But Atleti needed the players ahead of him to offer more. And the fact of the matter is they are still so reliant on two players, Julian Alvarez and Antoine Griezmann, when he came off the bench. Those two players are still the ones you look at to produce something out of nothing. My read on Julian Alvarez right now is he looks pretty frustrated with things. He doesn't look happy. Facial expression throughout this game was pretty scrunched up. So he's still outstanding. He still looks like he could score a couple goals in every game. But my tip for the future is if this continues for Atleti, there might be some speculation about his future, because he looks a level above.
Doing a lot of facial expression analysis today, Graham. I've noticed.
I don't know what's come over me.
Graham started to understand emotion and feeling. It's a class.
No, what it is Joe's not on the podcast today, so I feel unleashed.
Right?
Exactly.
More vibes
and stuff. Yeah.
More vibes. Excellent.
All we need is one should have done better, and I feel like we've really ticked a lot of boxes.
All right, let's go to Italy, shall we, in Serie A. Just the 12 new managers in Serie A this season, by the way. Antonio Conte, this season, is a nice stat for you, will only face 4 managers with the same team that he did last year. The longest serving manager in Serie A right now is Fabio Grosso of Sassuolo, 15 months, and most of that spent in Serie B because they were promoted as well. And speaking of Sassuolo, a 2-0 loss at the hands of Napoli in their opener there. Scotto McTominay and Kevin De Bruyne with the goals. De Bruyne, Graham, with a free kick. He had no business scoring, but there we are.
Yeah, he had no business scoring in that. I'm not entirely sure he meant it. I think it's a cross that bounces through to the other side, but we see that happen every so often. Scott McTominay certainly meant his header to find the back of the net. The MVP still the MVP in this league, and I don't know if you saw the picture of him that kind of went viral.
Yep.
Comes off later in this game. And
lounging.
Napoli, they've won the game 2-0. He's man of the match, scored the first goal of the season. And there's just this viral image of him lounging, lying along the side of the pitch, cool as anything. Italy has been so good for that.
You're surely not allowed to do that, are you? You've got to go back to the bench, haven't you?
He is. His aura dictates he can do whatever he wants.
No.
Yeah. Very well. All right. No arguments here.
But I had mixed sauce when the referee tried to shepherd him back to the bench, and the referee just gives up eventually.
Yeah, too much sauce.
Too much sauce. Right.
And just to do a quick beat on Napoli as a whole, not just aura analysis of McTominay, they were good. I think they still have a gear or two that they can go to. Biggest question for me coming into this season was how would they fit McTominay and De Bruyne into the same lineup? The answer is that on paper McTominay's sort of shaded to the left, but watching them play, it's the double pivot of Lobotka and Anguissa. They kind of anchor things. They then just give De Bruyne and McTominay the freedom to sort of drift and get in between the midfield and the forward line. I thought it worked quite well. So I can't wait to see more of them together, because as good as McTominay was last year, I think De Bruyne might just bring a little bit extra out of him this season.
And is Politano just like over on the other side applauding? Is he involved? Like, how are they using the right side if that left side is kind of fluid?
Well, I mean, Politano has more freedom to be a bit more dribbly, right? That's not really McTominay's game to like stand up a man and beat them. So Politano's still a threat, getting balls into the box. It's his ball for McTominay, right? From the right side that he then heads into the back of the net. So he's very much an important part of that lineup as well. It was Luca that starts as the centre forward in this team, which is still the question mark here for Napoli. They have been linked pretty strongly with Rasmus Højlund. Don't know if he's the answer, but I'm interested to say the least. So maybe that's where their attention will be in the final few days of the summer window.
I mean, it is mostly a joke, somewhat serious, I think, the point that is made about ex-Manchester United players. But I mean, if you've had McTominay come in and look the player he's looked, and Rasmus Højlund looked fine with Atalanta before he goes to Manchester United, I can see why they'd be like, we'll fix him. We'll bring him in. He'll score 400 goals, probably.
I think I made a joke in last week's or the last transfer window update show that we did that maybe McTominay was calling Rasmus Højlund. I read a report that literally said he's been talking to Rasmus Højlund about how much he enjoys Napoli.
The tomatoes, Rasmus.
Maybe it's the tomatoes that Rasmus Højlund needs.
They have staff in their canteen here.
There could be that. They haven't fired everyone. The other thing he might possibly say is they have an actual midfield, which, as Graham has pointed out, that Anguissa-Lobotka partnership is next level. I think it would make many, many, many teams infinitely better. It would certainly make Manchester United a better, more functional team. I think the two of them combined just lock it down so well, but can still also help attack, but can also be so solid defensively. But then organized, there's really good communication, and with Anguissa, there's also a little bit like the Musa maneuver. He can occasionally just have a 70-yard dribble where he slaloms through defenders, and I think it just gives you such stability. It is no surprise to me that Napoli look so good with the two of them in that midfield.
There we go. As for Milan, a 2-1 home defeat at the hands of Cremonese. Cremonese, the promoted side, their second ever victory at San Siro this was. And what a winner it was for them. Federico Bonazzoli with... he was channeling Zlatan, surely, Graham, with a goal of the season contender there. I'm sure Zlatan was at the game nodding, even if it was against his team.
Yeah, it's an absolute stunner of a goal, a bicycle kick or an overhead kick, depending on what Taylor said.
I haven't seen it. Now I'm going to have to load it. We're going to have a conversation.
It's an incredible finish, and the first goal is a thumping header from Basharotto, who is Ryan. I don't know if did you see his celebration? He's more like a bodybuilder
big boy.
than a soccer player. He leans into it as well. He does like the classic, like bodybuilder pose as his celebration. So love that. Milan didn't love this result, of course. I thought they were a little bit unlucky in that Cremonese barely created anything in the match. As I said, the first goal's a thumping header, second goal's an absolute stunner. And Milan, they did control a lot of the game. They got sucker punched a little bit in this one. Having said that, it was a lot of safe possession that didn't really have much of a connection to the forward line. And they did have quite a high XG, Milan, coming out of this game, but I think that was only because they had so many shots, not a huge number of high-value opportunities. Didn't help that Rafael Leao is already out injured when he had looked so good in pre-season and in the Coppa Italia. Also not ideal that Victor Boniface failed his medical over the weekend. So AC Milan back to square one in terms of their search for a new centre-forward. One positive, Luka Modric looked like Luka Modric. So that was a positive. But other than that, tough weekend for Milan.
I'm giving it bicycle. I think it maybe is closer to overhead kick, but he has the full, the physics to make it a bicycle, I think. Even if he maybe shins it at the same time. Still an incredible goal. Well done. Why did he fail the medical, Boniface?
Ankle ligaments or something?
Yeah, I was going to say knee. Some part of his body was not up to scratch.
Bad leg on the form is what we got.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Legitis.
Had to be sent back.
I hate to see it happen.
Roma with a 1-0 win over Bologna. Gianpiero Gasperini's reign starting well at the Olimpico. And Juve with a 2-0 win over Parma. Dusan Vlahovic, who I'm not sure if he's sticking around much longer, but Jonathan David with the goals for Juve as well in that one. Canada's very own. Wonderful stuff. Oh, Como and Lazio, by the way, we should talk about. A 2-0 win for Como in this one. Nico Paz on the score sheet, Taylor, for this one.
Oh, boy. He's very good. I will admit, I think I only watched one, maybe two Como games last year. I think both were on the road, so this was my first introduction to them at home. It's a strange stadium. It's like, for people who haven't seen it, it's like lower on the far side, so you can see the kind of mountains and houses behind the stadium, but it does create a very interesting effect, and then they zoom in so you're only focused on the crowd and the pitch. But it seems like a nice place to take in a game, especially when your team is winning the way Como were in this one, admittedly against a Lazio team that have financial restrictions because of financial breaches. I think they can't register new players this window. They could register players that were on loan last season, which they have done. They've signed a few players, but no new incomings, and a few departures means that they're not the strongest Lazio team we've ever seen. All the same, this was still a really good performance from Como, and an especially good performance from Nico Paz. He's the reason I watched this game, because there were the reports of the massive offer coming in from Spurs, the massive offer that was then turned down because Real Madrid have the right of first refusal and the buyback clause of, I think, 12 million euros after Como acquired him for 6 million. Como desperately trying to renegotiate that one and get out of it because, as we saw, he is going to be worth a lot of money. He already is worth a lot of money because he is just so good on the ball, so calm on the ball. He has the dribbles. He is very one-footed, and even so can still create from nothing, can still thread a needle as he does for the assist for the opener, and then can hit a free kick on top of it. I understand why there is the hype for him, who has already played a year in Serie A and looked good. Now he looks even gooder.
Much gooder, you'll find.
That's the technical term,
good.
Yes, thank you.
Indeed. Very good. Let's go to the Bundesliga real quick, shall we? Bayern Munich. 6-0 over RB Leipzig. Leipzig got bageled, Graham, to use a tennis. Joe's not around. I can use a tennis term.
Yeah.
I'm pleased for that. Big win for the defending champions, of course. Harry Kane with a hat-trick in this one. Luis Diaz on the score sheet again, just like in the Super Cup. And Elise with a brace as well. Bayern's attack, quite good.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the takeaways. I rewatched some of this game, or actually all of this game this morning. I didn't watch it live on Friday night, partly because I was out for dinner, but also because to watch this game in the UK would have meant watching Mark Goldbridge, and that's not good for anyone's health. So I decided not to.
Can you explain more? Because I think that there will be Americans, myself included, who don't fully understand what you're talking about, and then don't know who Mark Goldbridge is on top of it.
Oh wow, I'm not even. I don't know if I can explain definitely who Mark Goldbridge is, but basically, the Bundesliga in the UK this year has decided to fragment their rights across multiple different places. So one of the games on the BBC Sport website. I think one of the games is on Sky Sports, and as part of that fragmentation, the Friday night game in the UK is broadcasted live on Mark Goldbridge's YouTube channel. Who is Mark Goldbridge? He is YouTube rage bait. Is the best way that I can describe it. I actually think moving the games onto YouTube and having it in a kind of like chat format isn't a bad idea. It's not for me, but I think that is quite popular with a lot of young viewers. But Mark Goldbridge is not my favourite YouTuber, so I don't know how often I'm going to watch that.
Like inflammatory politics, inflammatory statements. Like what is it that makes him?
No, not quite that.
Okay.
Just like full rage about everything. Is Brad's.
Okay, gotcha.
He's a Manchester United fan, and he's... well, actually, he says he's a Manchester United fan. Part of the lore is apparently he's a Nottingham Forest fan, but became a Manchester United fan because there's more YouTube clicks in being a ragey Manchester United fan in the current era. So anyway,
checks out.
He's got Bundesliga rights this season. Watched this game back on Sky this morning, and thought Bayern Munich, as the scoreline suggests, very good. Hope we all enjoyed this season's Bundesliga title race.
Harry Kane Golden Boot winner now? Should we just put that one down?
Let's just have a nice season off in Germany. It's been a busy few years. Everyone could do with 8 months off. I'm only half joking because I just can't see how anyone will get near Bayern this season. Leipzig are meant to be one of the teams that can hang at their level, and they just got smashed 6-0 on opening weekend. Their attack was absolutely incredible. I will say Leipzig made it very, very easy for Bayern to get into the attacking third, whether that was through a player dribbling forward or Bayern just like passing round like a half press 30 yards out. Just seemed very easy for them. Having said that, difficult for Leipzig when the combinations between Gnabry and Diaz and Alicia in particular are just so slick. Luis Diaz seems to have slotted seamlessly into that attack. He's very willing to make runs centrally to get into the box, which is what he did for that goal. So he looks like he's going to be a big boost for this Bayern Munich team, which of course at the moment is still lacking Jamal Musiala. So they're still lacking one of their best players. So I think Bayern Munich are certainly in a domestic sense going to have a very successful season. Leipzig less so. Yeah,
it feels like maybe based on the opening window or opening weekend and nothing else, it feels like Frankfurt are maybe the only ones who will be able to give them some level of a challenge. Leverkusen obviously missing a number of starters, did not look very good in their opening day loss. Dortmund, I would say, did not look particularly cohesive in their 3-3 draw with St. Pauli.
So Dortmund, by the way.
3-1
down, finishing with 10 men. 3-3 draw in the end. Epic.
Yeah, epic, maybe not in the best possible way. So maybe that opens the door for other teams to rise up the ranks and challenge, but ultimately it feels like it's going to be Bayern and then Frankfurt and then a lot of question marks to follow.
Yeah. Interesting one for Leverkusen, you mentioned there, Taylor. 2-1 home defeat. A comeback win for Hoffenheim, that was as well. With Erik ten Hag, of course, making a losing league debut. Do we think that maybe selling Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong, Jonathan Tah, and Granit Xhaka might make them weaker this season? Is that a thing? Maybe?
Oh, and replacing Xabi Alonso with Erik ten Hag? Yeah, I think there's a possibility that maybe they flew pretty close to the sun, and now they're maybe coming right back down towards the ocean.
Remember I talked about that it's happening again facial expression on some of the Man United players' faces? Yeah, saw that on Erik ten Hag's face again this weekend.
I think I'm being discourteous. I think Erik ten Hag is a very good manager who was in a very difficult situation at Manchester United, but has proven that he can get the best out of players in the past, and I think still can. I think Leverkusen will be fine this season. I don't think that they are going to challenge Bayern Munich for the title. I think they have a lot of kind of growing to do and evolving to do, and I think they will end up doing it. I think they'll be probably back in the Champions League places. So I don't want it to sound like we're like, oh, there it is, Erik ten Hag, free fall, they're going to be awful. But I do think, Ryan, to your point, they have a ton of talent to replace, and they, I would say, gambled a lot on potential and on players that could end up being those replacements. But even somebody like Malik Tillman, who is meant to be not a Florian Wirtz like-for-like replacement, but maybe the eventual successor, is out with injury, is not going to be back until maybe mid-September, I think, according to the latest reporting. So it feels like have new players to bet in, have injuries to deal with, have a new manager. They will be fine in the end, but I think we'll probably get off to a shaky start, especially with a loss to Hoffenheim on the opening day.
Wonderful stuff. All right, over in Major League Soccer this weekend, we got Heung-min Son with his free kick goal, his first goal for LAFC in the league, I believe, with the 1-1 draw against Dallas. Did Son take free kicks for Tottenham very often? He didn't, did he?
Don't think so. Yeah. Can't really remember.
He's quite good at them, so, you know.
Maybe they should have done that more often.
Done that a bit more often. Yeah, there we go. Son on the score sheet there. Charlotte FC, 7 wins in a row, 4th in the East. I won't elaborate too much on that. Why don't we leave that to Joe Lowry and the gang on Tuesday's show, the MLS special show. Join in on that show to hear more from Major League Soccer this weekend. But I think that'll wrap out Weekend Review for this weekend. If you'd like more, Weekend Review Extras coming as well. Join us on our bonus feed, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, where we're discussing all the weekend goodness we didn't fit into this show. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your expertise as always, sir.
My pleasure, my friend. And a quick MLS update, DC United still bad.
Okay, good. Noting it down. Tune in tomorrow for more. Graham Ruffin, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey, and thank you to the puppy, which has stayed quiet throughout this. This is where you open the door and everything's in tatters.
Yes, listener, I am puppy training. I'm in a house alone with the puppy who I didn't know was going to interrupt or have a dirty protest during this. It doesn't seem like that has happened. Wonderful stuff. Long may it continue. Listener, thank you for joining us on this episode. We'll be back on this feed very shortly indeed. But for now, bye!